Welcome. Today, we're jumping into a really interesting strategy for generating retirement income. So let's break it down. Everything we're talking about here is for educational and informational purposes only. It is absolutely not financial or investment advice. You should always, always talk to a licensed professional before you make any financial decisions. Okay, let's get to it. So, what's the big problem we're trying to solve here? Well, for so many retirees, it all boils down to this one question. How do you get a high, steady income from your investments without slowly watching your nest egg just shrink? You know, that erosion of your principal, it's often called NAV decay, and it's pretty much the #1 enemy of a retirement portfolio that's built to last. To tackle this head-on, the source laid out some really specific rules for any fund that was going to make the cut. First, it had to have incredibly high yields. We're talking a range of 13% all the way up to a staggering 48%. But, and this is crucial, it had to do that without that NAV decay we just talked about. Plus, it needed to be a set-and-forget kind of investment, so you're not glued to your screen all day. And finally, it had to deliver consistent income, either every month or, in some cases, even every week. So here's our game plan. We'll start with that retirement puzzle. Then we'll profile the 5 ETFs that were picked. After that, we'll see how they all fit together. And finally, we'll look at the projected results and the big takeaways from this whole strategy. Okay, let's dive right into section 2 and meet the 5 specific ETFs that were chosen to meet those really demanding criteria. First one up is QQQI. This one is built on the tech-heavy NASDAQ 100 index. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Look at how these numbers work together. You're getting a huge 14% dividend yield, but it's not costing you the value of the fund. In fact, it actually grew by over 6%, giving you a total return of around 20%. That's pretty impressive. So how does it pull that off? Well, it uses a managed 2-part strategy. It generates income by using selective covered calls. You can think of that as kind of renting out the shares you own for a fee. And at the same time, it buys some out-of-the-money calls to try and boost those returns even further. So what does that actually look like in your pocket? Well, for every $10,000 you invest, the projected income is about $1,400 a year, and it's paid out in nice, steady monthly payments. Next up, we have BTCI. This fund taps into the, well, let's just call it the very energetic world of cryptocurrency to get its returns. Okay, just look at these numbers. A massive 22% yield combined with over 26% in NAV growth, that leads to a jaw-dropping total return of almost 49%. This fund really knows how to use volatility. So how does it manage this without actually having to hold on to Bitcoin? Well, its strategy is to write call options on Bitcoin futures. Basically, it's making money from all the price swings in Bitcoin without having to own it directly. Pretty clever, right? The bottom line here, for a $10,000 investment, this projects out to over $2,200 a year in income, also paid out monthly. All right, our third fund is MAGY. This one focuses on the 7 biggest, most influential tech stocks out there right now. And again, the numbers are just remarkable. A yield of almost 32%, with nearly 9% in NAV growth, for a total return of over 40%. But here's the real kicker with this one. The income is paid out weekly. The strategy here is pretty simple. It generates that massive income stream by writing call options on those magnificent 7 stocks. Again, it's like renting out its shares to create a steady paycheck from the market's biggest names. In that weekly payout, that's a huge deal when you're managing cash flow in retirement. A $10,000 investment here would project to almost $3,200 a year, and you'd be getting a piece of that every single week. Moving on to our 4th fund, we have SPYI. This one brings more of a broad market feel to the portfolio, giving you exposure to the entire S&P 500. Think of this one as the steady hand in the portfolio. The source included it for stability. It gives you a really solid 12% yield that's tied to the 500 largest companies in the US, and it still manages to eke out some positive growth for a total return of over 14%. So its income strategy uses what's called a spread approach with options. You can think of it like placing simultaneous counterbalancing bets on the market, which is designed to create a more predictable, steady stream of income. And for our 5th and final fund, we've got NVII. This one is all about capturing that explosive growth in the AI sector by focusing on just one stock, NVIDIA. Now, this fund is newer, so we're looking at a 6-month track record here. But wow, what a 6 months it has been. A total return of over 64%, which is driven by a huge 35% yield and a NAV growth of almost 29%. Its strategy is this really cool hybrid. Half of the fund is basically left alone to capture all of NVIDIA's potential growth. The other half is working hard, aggressively going after weekly income by writing covered calls. It's built to give you both growth and income from one of the hottest stocks on the planet. So we've seen all 5 of the individual pieces. Now the big question is, how do you combine these distinct, high-powered ETFs into one single, cohesive retirement portfolio? The thinking here is pretty clever. It's all about covering your bases and diversifying across different parts of the market. You've got QQI for the NASDAQ 100 and SPYI for the broader S&P 500. Then BTCI brings in that crypto exposure. MAGY covers what the source calls old tech, and NVID adds the cutting-edge new tech with AI. And the way you put it all together? It really couldn't be any simpler. The source suggests investing equally across all 5 funds. Each one makes up exactly 20% of your total investment. Nice and balanced. All right, this is the moment we've been waiting for. What does this all add up to? Let's look at the projected returns on a sample investment based on the numbers from the source. The example they use is a $250,000 investment. Now, the source notes this would likely be just one part of a person's total retirement fund. You know, the part dedicated to this high-income strategy. And from that $250,000 investment, the projected annual income is a truly jaw-dropping $57,875. That's a blended yield of over 23% from the entire portfolio. If you break that down, it comes out to a projected monthly income of $4,822. That is a serious stream of cash flow to help cover living expenses in retirement. But wait, there's more. Remember how important it was to avoid that NAV decay? Well, on top of that nearly $58,000 in income, the portfolio is also projected to grow in value by an extra $36,320 a year. And this all leads to what the source calls the win-win-win scenario. You get high income returns averaging around 23%. You get solid growth returns, averaging about 14%. And you get all of that while limiting the risk of that NAV erosion that just kills so many other high-yield funds. So that's the whole strategy. And it really makes you wonder, right? With this kind of blend of diverse high-yield funds, is this the new model for how people are going to generate income in retirement? It is definitely a compelling thought.